I'm Chris Chinchilla, and while some of you may remember me as a guitarist, for the past few years, I've mostly been playing the drums. And frankly, I love it. In this first series of videos, I want to start showing you why I love the drums, more about how they work, and crucially and eventually, how to play them. If you enjoy this video, take a look at the links and buttons below to find out more, subscribe, say thanks, and much more, of course. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get started.
Before I give you an overview of the drum kit and the individual components, I wanted to do a little bit of history, because the modern drum kit is actually not that old. It's about 100 years old or so, but the individual component parts are much older. If you've ever seen an orchestra, if you've ever seen a marching band, you've seen drums and cymbals of various types. And then the origins of the modern kit, the one you saw me seated at earlier, kind of start around the early 1900s-ish, usually with what was called pit orchestras. You've possibly seen some of these at musical theatre, or if you've ever been to an old school movie theatre that has a live orchestra playing an accompaniment, these were pit orchestras, kind of the less well paid in that world of orchestras, shall we say, and you'd have to employ an individual person to play each piece of percussion, and they wanted to save money. So people found ways to play more than one thing at once. And with chains and stands and pulleys and pedals, we end up with the modern drum kit. So it's basically a way to save money and replace 4 or 5 people with one. Music has always been an interesting career. And to give you an idea of how old some parts are, Zildjian, which is a company that makes cymbals, was originally founded in 1623 in the Ottoman Empire. It actually relocated to the States in the 20th century, but it makes it one of the longest running companies in the world. And they still make cymbals, and you will still see them on a lot of drum kits.
This is a standard 4-piece kit, although actually this has 2 of these, so it's not completely standard, but it usually means a standard number of drums and cymbals, and also most crucially, sizes. However, that is just a term. Many amazing drummers use far less, and some use far more. But if you're going to walk into any rehearsal studio, much like this one, you can expect something like this. So what do they all do? Good question. This large drum in the middle and on the ground is the kick or the bass drum. You hit it by pushing down on this pedal. There's a couple of different techniques for that, more of which I will cover later. It makes a loud, deep sound, as often you play it to match a bass instrument. This is another one of the key drums, the snare. It has a sharp snapping sound due to these metal bands underneath that actually you can turn off, usually with this lever. It has a few different sounds depending where you play it. Depending on where you play it and how, but again, more on that later. Just want to cover what they are. Now we have the toms. A drum kit usually consists of 1 or more, and the standard consists of these 3. They are called toms or tom-toms, just to be confusing. They have different sizes. The floor tom, which stands on its own, has the deepest sound. And then as you move around to the smaller ones, they get less deep. One of the most important cymbals is the hi-hat. This is a pair of cymbals with a pedal that can open, close, and somewhere in between. It also has a pedal, but unlike the kick drum, you don't need to do too much to control the pedal. Very slight. To begin with, you usually play them closed and use them to keep time as you play. But more on that later. Crash cymbal. This medium-sized cymbal is often used as kind of an exclamation point in short, sharp bursts. But you can also use it in louder passages to add even more noise. Finally, the ride cymbal. This large cymbal is one of my favorites. You could think of it as somewhere in between a hi-hat and a crash in terms of usage. You can use it to keep time, quite often in jazz music. But you can also use it to make emphasis and all sorts of other different sounds depending on how and where you hit it. More on that later. Okay, in this video, I briefly looked at the history and the components of a modern drum kit. In the next video, I will look at how you actually play it. I'm sure that's what you all really want to know, but you'll have to wait till the next video. If you enjoyed this video, again, please take a look at the links and the buttons below to find out more, subscribe, say thanks, etc., etc. I have been Christian Schiller, and thank you very much for joining me.